Shalom, this is Avi Lipkin. This is our second YouTube update. Today's date is the 5th of December, 2013. And today's message, or shall I say, the first of two messages today, will deal with the visit to Israel of American Secretary of State John Kerry. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to start with a classic teaching of mine. And this classic teaching appears in all 6 of my books. This teaching refers to something that took place in my life in April 1991. It's something that is true today as well. Secretary of State Kerry landed yesterday in Israel, and he's going to be meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He's going to be meeting with Palestinian leaders. And what he's trying to do is he's trying to nail down an agreement between the Palestinian Authority and the Israeli government. A lot of the legacy of President Obama, of course, is Obamacare. Another one is the rapprochement, or agreement with Iran, getting closer to Iran. The United States will not confront Iran. The United States will work with Iran. Business will resume. The sanctions will be lifted, and of course Israel will be thrown under the bus. Of course, the Palestinian problem is a very important problem that we have to deal with. But what I wanted to deal with today is, what is the value of American government promises to the state of Israel? Now, I started my work in the churches in November, December of 1990, and I came here not as a preacher, not when I say here, I came to the United States not as a preacher. I came to the United States as an Israeli army spokesman in the reserves, talking about the threat of Saddam Hussein. And I made certain predictions, and of course, when the predictions all came true, and I came back a second time in April 1991, everyone said, Avi's a prophet, Avi's a prophet. I said, I'm not a prophet, I'm an Israeli army spokesman. And we were debriefed by our commanders about what was about to happen with Desert Storm. In April, during my second trip, I get a call. I was in New York at my father's house, and I was told explicitly, get on the next plane tomorrow to Dallas. You're going to speak before the Council on Foreign Relations. And I didn't know what that was, but later I was to learn what it was. And it was basically the richest, most powerful people in the United States, the power brokers who decide who the American presidents will be, whether they're Democrat or Republican, because it's all about money. And when I got there, it was very, very interesting. I was obviously a pinch hitter. Pinch hitter is in baseball. I was a replacement speaker for a speaker who could not make it, Boris Yeltsin. And Boris Yeltsin had a little too much to drink, and he was an alcoholic, and they had to put him on a plane back to Russia. And the second part of the story, which is so funny, not only did God have to make Boris Yeltsin drunk so I would take his place, but when I got there, they thought I was someone else. They thought I was Amnon Lipkin Shahak, who was chief of staff of the Israeli army. And they said, aren't you General A. Lipkin? And I said, no, I'm Lieutenant A. Lipkin of the Army Spokesman's Office. But the important thing was, I gave them a Israeli military lecture on the borders of Israel. Today, John Kerry, Secretary of State of the United States, is visiting in Israel. And he is not doing anything very different than what all the other presidents and all the other secretaries of state have done since Rogers in 1971. What the US government has been trying to do is to force Israel back to the borders of June the 5th, 1967, which were the borders of Israel just before the Six-Day War. And everybody in his right mind who understands military strategy understands that the borders of June the 5th, 1967 are indefensible, that Israel cannot defend itself. And even the United Nations, in UN resolutions 242 and 338, and I recommend you look it up, UN resolutions 242 and 338 say, yes, Israel will give land for peace, and Israel will negotiate with its Arab neighbors for new borders which are secure, recognized, and defensible. Emphasis on the word defensible. Now, the UN is no friend of Israel, but when the UN talks about defensible borders, I think that's something we need to listen to. It means we don't go back to the old borders. And yet, Secretary of State Kerry, President Obama, and the administrations that preceded them, Republican and Democratic, all demanded that Israel return to borders which were indefensible. In other words, as Henry Kissinger used to say, Auschwitz extermination camp lines. After I finished my lecture, we had dinner. After we had dinner, they said, you know, Avi, you don't know realities. Reality number one, Israel is all alone. You're going to make peace with the Arabs. You're going to make peace with the Palestinians, whether you like it or not. And you're not going to give them only 91% of the land, which was Sinai. Not half the Golan, which is 2%. Well, 91 and 2% is 93%. Not Gaza, which is another 2%. We gave back 95%. Not the lands that we gave to Arafat, 97%. We're only talking about compromise from the Arab side, covering 3% of the land that Israel was had to take in wars of self-defense. And what the US government is saying today and what the Palestinians are saying today, no, Israel must be completely disarmed of its land and forced to borders which cannot be possibly defended. And I wanted to say that I look back at 1991. Nothing has changed in 23 years. We are looking at the same arguments which disavow agreements in the United Nations that Israel signed. Israel signed agreements 242 and 338 to make peace with the Palestinian side, to make peace with the Arab side. We made peace with Egypt. We made peace with Jordan. We are trying to make peace with the Palestinians. The Syrians are self-destructing with their civil war and the Arab Spring. And praise God, we didn't give them half the Golan. But we must keep half the Golan for our defense. Can you imagine if we had given half the Golan back to the Syrians for peace? And then all of a sudden there's this Arab Spring, and there's no more Syrian government, or the Syrian government changes, and say we repudiate any agreement with Israel. And meanwhile, the Syrian troops are at the Sea of Galilee. If we hand over half, the land of Judea and Samaria, God forbid, there is nothing stopping a 10 million man march to the sea coming in to destroy Israel. Israel must keep its military on the Jordan River as a border. And so we basically have compromised, Israel has compromised at 97%. We're only talking about 3%. And yet the Obama administration and those before him have been bringing all their pressure to bear on Israel to give up the remaining 3%, which is basic for our survival. And I just want to say that, President Obama was talking about all options on the table regarding Iran. And based on all options on the table regarding Iran, Israel should not attack Iran because the United States has all options on the table. Now it turns out Obama was lying to Israel all along, stringing us along, negotiating with the Iranians behind our backs, and coming up with this wonderful master plan to renew business with Iran, because business is good, to allow the Iranians to develop nuclear weapons to destroy Israel, which is not good, and throwing Israel under the bus. So if Secretary of State Kerry is here in Israel saying to Netanyahu, we promise you, we will stand, we have your back, we will stand with you. And then it turns out that he was lying to Israel all along. And I want to say one or two things going back, that, we were attacked on the eve of our independence. The United Nations gave us what is known as the partition plan of November the 29th, 1947. Immediately we were invaded by armies from Jordan and Iraq and others. May 15th, 1948, the Egyptian army invaded us. And after a year of war with Egypt, Israel ended up taking the Sinai for the first time. President Truman said, give it back. And, Israel always has the last word with the American government, yes, dear. And we gave it back. 1956, Israel took Sinai a second time in conjunction with the British and French Suez campaign. President Eisenhower was not happy with this. President Eisenhower said, give it back. So he gave it back a second time. But the Israeli government came to President Eisenhower and said, you know what, we can give it back. But what's going to happen if we have to take it a third time? And the United States says, we have your back. We will protect you. We will send the Sixth Fleet in. We will disarm those heavy cannons which are at the Straits of Tiran at the southernmost tip of Sinai. We will make sure to this and we'll make sure to that. We'll send the Sixth Fleet in. In May of 1967, Abdul Nasser put up the heavy artillery again at the Straits of Tiran. Moved 100,000 Egyptian troops up to the Israeli border. And our prime minister at that time, Levi Eshkol, said to President Lyndon Baines Johnson, you promised us that you'd come, you'd have our back, you'd send the Sixth Fleet in. And there was something that most Israelis don't even know. There was a 3-week period called the period of waiting, where Israel was waiting. And nobody knew what Israel really was waiting for. And I'll tell you what we were waiting for. We had a written commitment from the US government under President Eisenhower that the Sixth Fleet would come in, open up the Straits of Tiran, and prevent Egypt from doing what it did in 56 and again in 67. 3 weeks, we waited. And then in the end, the answer that came from Washington was, from the State Department was, we cannot find our signed copy in the vaults of the State Department. And that was what led to the Israeli preemptive Six-Day War. And Israel took Sinai a third time because the United States lied to Israel. The United States promised us to protect our back. The United States lied to us. There's another story from the Six-Day War, and this is something the Israeli government doesn't like to talk about, and it was the USS Liberty. The USS Liberty was an NSA surveillance ship right off the coast of Sinai. The Liberty was strafed by the Israeli Air Force. It wasn't sunk, it was strafed. The Israeli Air Force sent a message. We could have sunk that ship. We didn't sink. It was an American ship, American Navy, NSA, and what it was doing was it was spying on Israel. And the Six-Day War started with a brilliant 3-day offensive in which we broke the back of the Egyptian army. We took Sinai, but we had to pull those troops out and then send them to Jerusalem because the Jordanians were attacking Jerusalem. And so basically, Sinai was empty of Israeli troops. And the NSA ship, the Liberty, was reporting to the Egyptian military, the Israelis have pulled their army out, pour whatever's left of the Egyptian army into Sinai, take it back because the Jews are not there anymore. So do you understand now why the Israeli Air Force attacked the Liberty? And this was under Lyndon Baines Johnson. He claims he didn't know about it, that the NSA was working behind his back. I claim otherwise. I feel that there are very vested interests in the State Department, Arabists, people who believe in working with the Muslims, working against Israel. And today we see an American president, President Obama, who wrote in his book that he would never ever attack another Muslim country. Iran is a Muslim country. And yet to Netanyahu, he says, we have your back. Israel has the right to defend itself. And yet the United States is allowing Iran to develop a nuclear weapon to wipe us off the face of the earth. So the American government is again lying to Israel. And if the American government says, make peace with the Palestinians, we have your back. Now you tell me, can we rely on the US military and the US government in the future?